Welcome to Bizarre Podcast.
Hello guys, welcome back. My name's Dave Mack and you're listening to Bizarre Podcast. Now today's episode is going to be a little bit different than usual. In honour of Halloween, I'm going to be bringing to you my top 10 favourite horror movies to watch over the Halloween season. Now this top 10 list is in no particular order at all. It's just a list of 10 horror movies that I do really enjoy, and hopefully if your taste is anything like mine, you'll enjoy too. Oh, but before we start, seeing this is Halloween, I think we better add some spooky sound effects and some spooky music. Now, as I said, this is in no particular order at all. The first movie I've got on my list is The Exorcist, 1973, starring Linda Blair. Now, what can I say about this movie? It's a must. I just had to add it to the list. It tells the story of Reagan, who was possessed by a demon that she made contact with on a Ouija board. It was banned in the UK for years and hated by the church. And even today, some particular scenes are hard to watch. And as I actually mentioned a few episodes back when I did the Ouija board episode, this film is supposed to be actually based on true events, which of course makes it all that more scary. I mean, when I think of this movie, so many things come to mind. You've got the head spinning all the way around, you've got the vomit, you've got the flashes of the demon face on the screen, which used to terrify me when I was younger. And there's loads more disturbing bits in this film. I mean, if you've never seen it, you're in for a treat. It's worth mentioning as well why I'm running down this list. I'm not going to give away too many spoilers, just in case there's some of you who haven't seen these films and you want to watch them for the first time. So I'm going to be giving a brief description of the film. I'm not going to be too spoiler heavy. Okay, going on to film number 2 is the movie The Conjuring 1 and 2. I'm going to include The Conjuring 1 and 2 as one entry because it's the same franchise, it's the same film in my opinion. Now both The Conjuring 1 and 2 are actually based on the Ed and Lorraine Warren cases, so these films are actually supposed to be loosely based on true events. Now the first Conjuring movie from 2013, starring Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson, who actually play Ed and Lorraine Warren. The movie is actually set in a very haunted house, which is again based on the true events documented by Ed and Lorraine Warren in the 1970s. I'll just give you a little bit of the plot, but as I said before, I don't really want to spoil much, so it'll be short and sweet. The Perrons move into a secluded farmhouse which has a very dark history. Mayhem follows as the family realise they are sharing the house with dark entities. Now this film I did really enjoy. It's really nicely shot, there's plenty of scares, it's really well acted, it's just a perfect horror movie, it is one of my favourites. And then they released a sequel, which was based on a totally different case by Ed and Lorraine Warren. And it was actually based on one of my favourite poltergeist activity cases from the UK. I've actually done an episode on it, the Enfield Poltergeist. Now, of course, they did change some elements to the movie. It is Hollywood, after all. But the bare bones of the movie is still there, although they have added extra bits. And this is actually where we're introduced to the Nun. You may recognise that. She's got her own movie as well, a horror film called The Nun. That's not going to be included in this top 10 list because I've actually seen it and I didn't think it was very good. I didn't think it was very good at all. But adding The Nun into this film did actually make it very enjoyable, and I did enjoy the character in this. The lady who plays the demon nun is quite creepy in it. And for those of you who aren't quite familiar with the Enfield Poltergeist case, I have actually done a very detailed episode on it if you want to go back and find it. It's quite an entertaining story. It's one of my favourites, as I said. I'll just give you a little bit of plot into this film. In the second movie, the Warrens are needed in the UK to help a single mother and her children who are experiencing a lot of paranormal activity from a deceased past resident of the house. Next on my list is The Woman in Black, starring Daniel Radcliffe, released in 2012. Now, in this movie, Daniel Radcliffe plays a lawyer who is grieving for the loss of his dead wife. Radcliffe is sent to a recently deceased woman's home to receive some important documents, only to discover that the house is haunted by a vengeful spirit of a scorned woman. Now, this might upset a few of you Harry Potter fans, and don't get me wrong, I love those movies, I watch them all the time with my kids, but I wasn't a massive fan of Daniel Radcliffe. I didn't think he was a very good actor. I thought in the Harry Potter films he was fine, but I didn't really think he would be very good out of those films. And then I watched this film, and it took me by surprise. He is actually very, very good in it. And the scares are aplenty, and the visuals in it are brilliant as well. It's a really, really well-made movie with a really terrifying story. I mean, you gotta give this one a go. It is really good. The next on my list is probably one of my favourites, The Shining, starring Jack Nicholson, which was released in 1980. Although not a perfect transition from the book, which is amazing. If you haven't read it, please do. It's such a good book. I mean, Stephen King really puts so much detail into all of his books, and he actually makes you feel like you're in the Overlook Hotel. Like I said, if you've not read the book, please read it. I mean, I want to read it. As I'm talking about it now, it's making me want to read it. But we're not here talking about books, we're talking about the movie. And the movie is fantastic in its own right. As I said, it goes away from the book, but in its own right, the movie is brilliant. When Jack becomes the winter caretaker at the Overlook Hotel with his family, his wife and his young son Danny, they become isolated over the winter. However, this was expected, and Jack is more than happy with this, as he was hoping to progress writing his novel. But it's a horror film, and as you can guess, all does not go to plan, as he slowly starts to lose his mind, thanks to the many ghosts that reside inside the hotel walls. And then of course you have his son Danny, who seems to be having psychic visions, who is also being tormented by the ghosts of the hotel, including the spirits of the slaughtered twin girls, and the lady in 237. Now I'll say no more. You've got to watch this film. I don't want to give it any spoilers away. It is fantastic, and Jack Nicholson shines in this. No pun intended. Movie number 5 is Cabin in the Woods, starring Chris Hemsworth before he became Thor, and Kristen Connolly, and this film was released in 2011. When 5 college friends turn up at a remote cabin in the woods, they are soon set upon by murderous zombies. But the zombies are not the only monsters they should be worried about. There's a little bit of a twist to this film. Without going into too many details, it's like a breath of fresh air for a horror film. It was different. And you know, this film actually reminded me of the Evil Dead 2 with the cabin and the zombies. And you know what? I didn't put the Evil Dead 2 on this list. I can't believe I did that. You know what? The Evil Dead 2, also a good film, but it's not on this list. But, you know, if I'm going to recommend The Evil Dead 2, I've got to recommend The Evil Dead 3 as well. But, you know, they're not on the list. They're not on the top 10 list. Let's get back to the actual list. So, The Cabin in the Woods. Great film. Give it a go. You'll not regret it. Film number 6 is The Babadook. It was released in 2014, starring Essie Davis and Noah Wiseman. Now, to me, this film just seems to come out of nowhere. I don't remember any advertisements for it. I don't remember anything. But I saw the DVD in HMV, and I thought, that looks interesting. So I took a chance and I purchased it. And I don't regret it. It was really good. But what is it actually about? Now, before we get into it, the actual title of the film, The Babadook, is actually an anagram, and it spells out a bad book. So the Babadook is an anagram for a bad book. Now, the story goes that Amelia, who lost her husband in a car accident whilst on the way to give birth, struggles being a single mother. Her son is constantly afraid of monsters, and things get worse when they discover a book called The Babadook. The Babadook is a tall, thin humanoid being with elongated arms and legs and talon-like hands, a pale face and a top hat, and he likes to hide in the shadows. But of course, the Babadook monster isn't content with just staying in the book, and it isn't long before the Babadook starts to haunt them for real. Now, as I said, it's a great film, and if you want to be creeped out, the sound effects that they use when this creature is actually on screen is enough to keep you awake at night. It's perfection, this film. It's a really good horror film. Give it a go. And number 7 on my list is Stephen King's It, Part 1 and Part 2. And just like The Conjuring 1 and 2, I'm classing this as one entry. Now, before we go any further, I'm not talking about the 1990s mini TV film that they did. I'm talking about the newer versions, starring Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise the Dancing Clown, who is an ancient evil that emerges from the sewers of Derry every 27 years to feed on the children of the town. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the 1990s TV series that they did, and Tim Curry's version of Pennywise the Dancing Clown will always be one of my favourite horror characters. But Bill Skarsgård also brings something very special to these new films, and he is terrifying in them. And just like The Shining, the book to this film is fantastic, and if you haven't read that, I do recommend you read that as well. It is very good. Now, it's worth mentioning that the ending to this book has always been considered unfilmable, and this just goes to show in the 1990s mini-film that it wasn't a very good ending and not a lot of people liked it. And unfortunately, I feel that the new film also suffers from this, but don't let that discourage you. The rest of the film is very good, very creepy, and makes up for the disappointing ending. And at number 8, I have Insidious 1 and 2, starring Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne and Lynn Shay. It was released in 2011 and 2013, and once again, I count this as one movie. There's a third, but it's not as good as the original two. Now, this story revolves around a young boy who is attacked by an evil spirit and falls into a comatose state. Whilst he is in this coma, ghosts are actually fighting to take possession of his body. Now, 3 months go by and the boy is still in a coma, and his parents start to notice that they're not alone in the house and witness numerous evil spirits around the home. The couple seek help from a demonologist who tells them about a demonic presence in their house. The sequel is a continuation story of the first film, and I can't really say much about it because it'll spoil the first film and spoil elements of the second film as well, but it is really creepy. I mean, if you're a fan of violence or gore, this probably isn't the film for you. It was given a lower age certificate, I think to bring more money at the box office, but it doesn't affect the film one little bit, and I think it's just shot perfectly. You've got to watch these two films, they are brilliant. And we're nearly at the end of our list now, and coming in at number 9 is The Devil's Backbone from 2001. Now, this is a Spanish movie that requires subtitles, if you don't mind that. Now, I wasn't originally one for watching a film with subtitles on, but as I got into this film and I started watching it, I actually forgot that I was reading the subtitles because I was so entranced and engrossed in the film. After losing his father, a 10-year-old boy named Carlos is sent to a school which shelters orphans, only to discover that this school has a dark past, which is connected to the ghost of a schoolboy that roams the grounds. When I saw this movie, I instantly fell in love with it. The story is top-notch, it looks stunning, and it's creepy without being over the top. Please, if you haven't seen this one, seek it out, it's so good. And now we have number 10. Now, as it is Halloween, and this is a Halloween list for the top 10 horror movies, how could I possibly not include the movie Halloween from 1978 starring Jamie Lee Curtis? I mean, come on, how could I not include this film? The movie is actually called Halloween, the movie is actually set at Halloween, and I can't think of anything more perfect to watch on Halloween night. A mental patient is committed to a sanitarium for murdering his sister on Halloween, whilst dressed as a clown. 15 years later he escapes and returns to his neighbourhood, and once again it is the night of Halloween. He kills a mechanic and dresses in his overalls, and steals the classic white mask, which is actually a William Shatner mask. Bit of trivia for your ear. Which is, I believe, turned inside out and sprayed white, and it's become quite iconic now. And anyway, soon the body count racks up as he becomes obsessed and starts stalking a babysitter that he is intent on killing. This is an absolute classic for Halloween. You've got to watch this one on Halloween. I know I said it was in no particular order, but I think this one probably tops them all. If you're going to watch anything on Halloween, this is the one. And there you have it, we've come to the end of my top 10 scary movie recommendations for Halloween. To be honest, I could have probably rambled off more than 10, I could have probably rambled off 20, 30. I mean, I could have easily mentioned the Child's Play films, Nightmare on Elm Street films, The Lost Boys, oh my god, what a film that is. The Hellraiser films, I mean, I could have gone on and on picking horror films, but I think the 10 that I originally picked for you are some of the best films, in my opinion, and hopefully you think the same. Let me know. You can contact us on Facebook. I'd love to hear what your favourite horror films are. Maybe you could suggest one to me that I haven't seen before. That would be great. I'll put a link in the show notes for the Facebook group if you want to come on and have a chat and recommend me some horror films that I may not have seen. And also, I think I'll head over to YouTube and add some of the trailers to the show notes for some of the movies that I've mentioned today. So, you know, if you like the sound of one of them I mentioned, you can go and give it a click and see what the trailer's like before you watch it. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast already, now is a perfect time to do it so you don't miss the next episode where I'll be doing a deep dive into the urban legend Bloody Mary. I don't mean the drink, I mean the evil spirit in the mirror. So if you don't want to miss that, subscribe to the podcast today and you'll be updated as soon as that comes out. So I think that's all we've got time for today. Have yourself a very, very happy Halloween and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye bye.